Hello and welcome to Overcoming Adversity podcast with Amanda Marino, me, Matthew Williams, and Sarah Frias. How are you guys doing?
We're doing great. Oh, I'm doing great. I don't know why I'm answering for you now.
Great as well.
Okay, good. See?
You're now answering as one. Yeah, we're doing great.
We are one.
We're all doing great.
So we wanted to talk today about couples and addiction. So the whole season of Intervention that I filmed, which, the season starts actually tonight on, the other season started, which was all Canada, the first 8 weeks. And the season that I'm on starts tonight. I'm on next week. And so couples and addiction is a big thing. And that's why this series is going to be different. This whole filming it, finding two families to participate in it,
That's
finding
hard.
two willing participants. And it brought a bunch of variables, for the show and for all of us, some dangerous situations, some crazy situations. We talked about family on an episode, but this is, about couples, whether we've gone through it personally, professionally, we've known people that have gone through these struggles. And it's about is codependency first or is the drug first? And I think it's different with each relationship.
That's a good question.
I think in some of the ones that I worked with, it was the person that was the drug of choice. And then came the drugs with it. And sometimes it's the drugs and that's why the person keeps staying around them. So Sarah.
Yeah, I was trying to think about my lovely relationship in addiction. And I was like, was it the drugs or was it I don't know.
Mine was always the drugs for me.
I don't know.
But mine were never really the ones I'm thinking of, unless I can think of a different one, but mine were never really relationships. They were about I was dating them because they were the drug dealer.
Oh, yeah. I didn't do that. I used a lot by myself. I was a loner. I definitely think that mine usually, and everybody's different, is based upon who they are, maybe what they have. The one I specifically remember we talked about trauma, in one of the episodes is traumatic, was this relationship. And I met this person. I had just relapsed, just trying to get back into the fellowship I was in. And he had his own place and he had his car and he had money. He was like, I'll take care of you financially. And I was like, okay, but I didn't know, where he was at. Mental health was pretty severe, obviously. Then it included substance use. And it was a very toxic, unhealthy, traumatic relationship that I put myself in.
But you weren't healthy yourself.
Oh, no.
Right?
I was a mess.
Where we're at.
No, I was a mess. Yeah, I wouldn't have been there if I was where I'm at now, And
a guy that wants to scoop up a woman that in that condition, there's something wrong with both y'all.
We're all sick, yeah. But I do remember coming up on, talking about the intervention that you're on with the couples is I remember not wanting to leave. And I remember not wanting to get help. And was it the drugs or was it that relationship? Because we were so codependent on each other. And I think back and I remember I went to treatment. We went separately to treatment. So it's kind of like a episode of Intervention.
Yeah, you were living it, girl.
And I came down to Florida, of course. And I was like, I'm done. I'm going back to where I was living. And I got a flight and he was supposedly sober. We had an apartment together and he let me stay there, which was really nice of him. He didn't stay there. He was staying at his parents' house. And I remember him coming over there and I had no food, nothing. I didn't know what I was doing. I just didn't want to be in treatment. And he just was there. He brought Taco Bell for himself and I was just sitting there and I was still wanting to stay with him. And then we finally had to get rid of the place, obviously. And I remember crying, leaving. It was almost like that area, that apartment was all I knew. Even though it was only for it sounds like it was forever, but it was really only this 4 or 5 months of this. But it was so toxic that it was all I knew 24/7. That was my comfort.
Yeah.
I was safe there.
That's a good point too, the comfort.
And I remember crying leaving there. And I look back now and I'm like, oh God.
The comfort in the discomfort,
there,
right?
Yeah. It was really It was a hard time. I mean, that's a lot of work that I've done on myself, is that 4-month gap of that relationship and not wanting to leave, and I was just so invested in it.
Yeah.
That was all but it was never good. Like, I would sit and cry and hope that I passed away. And I mean, there was a lot of mental health that like really, I was crying all the time, and I'm not a crier, just so everybody knows.
You're becoming one slowly.
Becoming one slowly, but I would just sit there crying, but I wanted to stay there, I'm not really sure why, but I wanted to stay there. And I think I guess I do know, it's probably like the comfort.
You were comfortable in the pain and the discomfort. And I think that, like there's this, the saying of like, whether you're in recovery with substance use disorder or you're going through your mental health healing or whatever, trauma, eating disorder, like to not get in a relationship right away because you're supposed to focus on yourself. It's like, how can you show up in a relationship for someone else when you aren't healthy yourself?
Yeah.
And I think that we both all have seen how many people get into a relationship or go back to an ex and it be a very toxic situation when you're trying to get their life together. Can you think of any examples, Matt?
Yeah, I can think of a couple. Just if I'm going to draw on like experience from like just getting sober and watching these rehab romances develop, I was given clear directions when I was allowed into this program as like a gift from a friend. It was like, we're going to get you in here and you're not here to make friends, run around with the women or, obviously use drugs or alcohol. And if any of those things strike you as something you want to do, then walk away and leave. Cause he was putting his name out there for me. But I watched, I was definitely not the most popular person in treatment because if you were doing the wrong thing, I was going to let him know because it was my community and I was not trying to get drunk and I was not trying to get high and I wasn't trying to leave. And you could have left. Like you can hop a fence, you can walk out the front door. And I watched a lot of people throw their life away. And it's always like, was it because of the drugs? Was it because they wanted to use? Or is it because like life was getting comfortable in a different way? And they're like, man, I just want to get back to using, or, I want to act out, sexually on campus and find someone to bring me down. I mean, they had the smush bush, where I was like the one place where like the cameras didn't shine. And
the
like,
smush bush, I'm dead.
And I'm going to remember that forever.
Right.
I
won't ever forget it because
thank you.
The cameras wouldn't pick up a certain corner of the parking lot. And that's where like the people, if they were trying to get away with something,
they hit the smush bush.
They hit the smush bush. And I was like, that's just like, why not just, if you're going to go for it, just enjoy the place that we're in and use your bedroom. Like, what are you doing? Use the shower. Do something.
There's something about that smush bush.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna, right. Because think about it, right? It's you're rationalizing, you're trying to get away with something, you're manipulating a situation, and it's a dangerous thing, and you feel good because you can't
get out
drink,
of yourself.
You can't drug, and it's like I'm going to go seek solace in somebody that might make me feel good, even though I know what I'm doing is wrong. And I think I watched a lot of people that aren't here anymore, get into these early romances and end up, either one of them getting severely, hurt, or both of them, or one dying, or both of them going back to use and going through a trauma or going through something where it's, it's relationships are ill-advised. I can't really speak to it because I was dating my now wife when I got sober. And did a lot of work with it. Again, I told her to run the other way. And I remember one of the therapists there was kind of like, oh, you really like this girl. See if she'll fill this out. And it was like a questionnaire about relationships. She filled it out, sent it back. And he was like, I'm shocked. And, he was kind of like, wow. He's like, this is rare. I thought that this would have given you the opportunity to like not continue with this relationship. But, again, and there are, there definitely in relationships, there's codependency issues when there's no drugs or alcohol.
Totally.
And I think that's, a different conversation. But yeah, whether it's for drugs or alcohol or just the convenience of another human connection, I don't know. I can't really speak to it. Like, I think the people that I've seen that get into these relationships, and I don't tell, it's like, I never tell people, don't get in a relationship. I will suggest it's not the most conducive to your recovery and early recovery, and suggest that working on yourself and being selfish. And I was very clear with Chelsea. I was like, if you're sticking around, my recovery is number one. You will not be number one. And I have to do these things because this is what these people are telling me to do if I'm going to change my life.
Yeah.
And she got it, and she supported it, and she tried to understand and went to meetings and really tried to dive into like, what is this really about? This isn't just like a DUI. This isn't a consequence. This is like real life. Like, and if you care about a person, it comes back to like this, the topics of we talked about with family. Like, what am I willing to do for my loved one? Am I willing to go take a look at where I'm at and what I'm doing? Am I codependent? Am I crossing the line? Am I creating trauma? Am I manipulating a situation? And I think there can be the game of that in early recovery and late whatever kind of recovery.
Yeah, I mean, in life, but definitely in this. But no, that's a good woman right there, filling out the questionnaire and showing up. You know,
crazy.
She's definitely. We've already known she's a great woman.
Yeah.
We love her, but that's even a more beautiful depth piece. Yeah, the one rule I broke every rule in rehab except hook up with someone. Like I already felt awful about the way I behaved before entering this, and you don't know where everyone's coming from, and like I was already. Like, no, I did enough in my addiction. Like, I'm not touching anyone in this place.
Right.
It was my one thing. And it was one gift I did give to myself. I did stay single for a long time.
Yeah.
I left Merrick's dad when I went to rehab, and I wanted to stay with him. But I remember he's a great guy. You know, I mean, he never, he's Irish. And when he drinks, he drinks to get himself kicked out of bars and things like that. But he always worked and functional. And he's definitely changed a lot over the years. But he wanted to still go out and stuff when I went home. We didn't go to a halfway house. It really wasn't like that then. You know, I had their outpatient was like seeing my same therapist for like once a week.
Yeah.
And I was home for like a week, and he stayed out till like 2 a.m. one night and was like still going out and still drinking. And I'm like, I'm either going to stay with him or I'm going to change my life. And that's where it breaks down to. And I knew that I had to leave and I had to be by myself and start over.
Yeah.
But that's a hard thing for people to do when you're when you're very insecure. Like I did awful things. Like I left our kid in the crib with dirty diapers. I was not showing up as a good mom. So there was just so many things that I had guilt and shame about, which could have kept me around. But I knew that for me, I wanted to be a mom and show up differently for my son more than anything else. And so I chose to go off on my own and struggle and, work 13-hour days at the breakers and just build my life. But a lot of people I see hang on to that woman, hang on to that man, which is associated oftentimes with the using, whether it's using with them or the way they feel because when they're with them, that makes them want to drink or get high. So it's really complex, There's so many different situations I've seen.
Yeah, and there's so many factors because it might be uncomfortable, but it's comfortable in that chaos.
It is, yeah.
Right.
That's what
and
you know.
And it's like, oh man, I have to go meet someone new. Like I don't even know how these apps work, and I know some friends that truly enjoy them, and they're single and they love it. And I'll never forget a buddy said when he's sober and he was using these apps and he had been in a serious relationship and gotten out, and he says, "Don't get me wrong, I'm having a really good time." He's like, "But I'm so fucking lonely."
Yeah.
Because I can't really
I've heard
develop
that.
a true connection with somebody. And you may or may not find it on an app or whatever. But
Do you know I met Phil on an app?
Right.
He also saw me walking down the street a week before, but
Sure.
I was only on an app for 3 weeks of my life, and I met him on there. It was traumatizing and terrifying. It is intense, and I had not been in that scene in over like 13 years, so I'd never been on an app.
Right.
But yeah, it's a lot. Like,
And that's what I'm saying. It's like
Russian roulette. You're like messaging a bunch of. I was too overwhelmed by it.
Right. And again, you can find something. Again, I don't from not my experience, but if you look at like you're not going to clubs, you're not going to. When you get sober, you can go anywhere, right? You can do anything, go anywhere, be around anybody, and unless you feel some kind of way and like you're not trying to prove it and like, oh, I'm going to go here even though I'm uncomfortable. It's making sure you're going to places that are, again, conducive to your recovery and you're around people that, want what's best for you and not having you be there selfishly.
I always said to myself, what's there for me? Like, is there music? Is there entertainment? Is there good people? If there's nothing there for me, then I'm not going to go.
I like that. It's a good thought process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm not really sure whether I think it's a combination of both. I don't think there's a right answer, whether it's the drugs or the person or a combination of both, or, you know, maybe they don't like the person or the drugs anymore, but they're just there.
Yeah.
Because.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people stay in relations longer, you know, past the expiration date. That's very, very many people.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, and they do it because they're scared of change, or they're doing it because they're scared of independence. And then you put in drugs and alcohol in the mix, and it's definitely a complicated one. I know that, you know, like in the filming of the season, it was so hard for the casting people to find, you know, they needed to have two families that were willing to participate, at least one person from like each family side.
Sure.
And that was really hard in some cases.
I could imagine. Yeah.
So there was like all these people, and then there was nobody from the other side. And that's like, you know, so it took them, like, usually casting for intervention is pretty easy, you know.
I'm sure.
So meet your loved one, and they're willing to do a documentary and whatever. But now, you know, doing it with couples, it caused a whole other element. And there were times where they wanted us, they were asking us, is it the codependency or the drug addiction? And I just saw so much enmeshment with the both. It was just hard to uncover it. And of course, seeing the ones that went and got help, and seeing how their relationships either, you know, manifested and stayed, or how they changed, you know, because maybe when you get clean and get off all the drugs, you might not really like that person if you don't know them any other way.
Yeah.
You know, that's another fear for people too. Is like, oh, well, if they go get sober and clean, they're not going to love me anymore, because this is what we do together. This is our thing, you know?
Yeah, I was going to say a separate thing that I thought of is that I don't think for me personally it was drugs, because like I said, like I was a loner. I could get them myself. Mine was really codependency, but also thinking I could fix the other person. So it'd always be someone that was sicker than me, which was hard, tough to do. And I would want to fix them. Like I could fix them, you know, I could get them sober. We could do this together, you know, and ride off into the sunset and all this. And it obviously didn't turn out that way. But I think I stuck with that for a while. I would always just pick the sickest person and try to fix them.
I was the opposite. I was the person that men thought they could tame or fix.
Oh.
And there was none of that until I was willing.
Yeah. I actually did a podcast with this woman who, when you see her now, I never knew the story behind her. And then I had her on the show, and it'd actually be interesting to have her here, because she talks about her journey. And at one point, like, I hate to say it was such a good hook for the intro to the show, but it was like, at one point, her top goal was being the head bitch in the trap house, because she was a prostitute. And she was like talking about all of this, and the whole thing was about manipulating the situation, the men around her, the women around her, just to get that.
Yeah.
And then like realize that, you know, when she got her face slashed open by a crack pipe and a crazy woman, she's like, maybe this isn't.
Maybe I don't want to be that bitch.
Maybe this isn't a good thing.
Yeah.
No.
And just hearing that, you know, the story and the journey of it, and just kind of her relationships since. I sat there and I was like, that is a wild story. And, you know, now she's speaking on stages and working with women and has her own, you know, business. And it was just really cool to hear the transition from that, because to walk through anything difficult, I mean, anything in your life is challenging, especially when you have to take a look at yourself. But when you can actually come through it on the other side, like you both have done, and speak to other women about that, and being the mother and the mothers that you are, and being the businesswomen that you are, I think it's such a huge step and huge accomplishment that sometimes, like, I know you both realize it, but like you don't realize it. Does that make sense?
Because it's our normal, but we
Right.
don't take a step back to
Correct.
like be like, wow, like,
Right.
yeah. And I think the same for you.
And,
you know,
and it's like, wow, how did we get from being a loner, getting my, you know, I was the same way. Like I don't need your help getting
I'm good. Yeah.
what I need. And I didn't really want to get close to people, because I didn't want them to know who I really was.
Same.
And it was like that battle of like, I love being out with everybody and having fun and, you know, going here, doing this and having all these things. And then if I got too close, it would, like, the wall would go up, or I would end the relationship. And then they'd be like, what's your problem? Just be like, yeah, trust me. And it's not you.
Stay back.
It's
Trust me.
me.
Yeah.
It's me. It's not you.
Yeah.
And like, it was never accepted. And
I used to make it about them, but it was really me. I'd make them feel like I was awful in relationships in my addiction. I was a traumatized young girl, and I hurt a lot of people. I broke a lot of hearts. And it was like a thing, like once they fell for me, I was out. And it was, I think that's the
you won the game.
Yeah, it was a game.
But I think maybe I thought it was a game then, but now like I realize as a traumatized young woman, like to be loved by someone was scary and uncomfortable to me.
Sure.
Because I didn't want that in my space.
makes
Like,
sense, yeah.
you know, I recently had a whole situation with a past old boyfriend reaching out, which I had like a lot of healing with over the past 10 years, but something wasn't right with him. This day he reached out and was like bringing up stuff when I was 14 years old that I did with him. And I'm 43 years old and my son was about to walk graduating. And I'm like, what is going on here? Like, you got to work through that. But like, I've made a living amends. I've apologized for the person I was. Like, I was a sick girl and I hurt a lot of people. But how I show up in relationships today is like, I'm a really good friend, a really good girlfriend, a really good daughter, a really good sister, you know, like all these things that I was not capable of doing in my addiction.
For sure.
So I think if you get yourself together, you could actually look at your relationships completely different and look at, oh, I do have codependency. Like when I got separated from Frankie, my therapist was like, you're codependent. And I'm thinking codependent means one version of like, I'm very clingy and needy. That's not all. There's many versions of codependent. Sure. Mine was putting other people's needs before mine and not taking care of myself and being like, well, my kids are happy and this is good and we run a household good and he's a great person. But what I need really doesn't matter. That's codependent. You know, so, and if you are, it's okay. You know, it's okay. You
There's
can get
a lot
better.
of them.
There's a lot of us.
There's a lot of us. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you guys sharing your experiences and your strength and, you know, hope and healing for relationships and recovery or an addiction or in mental health or
They're
just
tough. Yeah.
or in everyday life. You know, we all, I think human relationships are one of the hardest things in life. Other humans. Yeah. I mean, even Sarah and I the other day were just like, what is going on with we were concerned for the human race.
Yeah.
The other
She
day.
texted me on the vacation. She said, what's going on? Is it still bad out there? And I was like, just don't text me.
I texted her. I said, I'm concerned for the human race. Like all this weird stuff was going on. I'm like, what is going on with people?
It was
like,
constant. Yeah. It was all day.
like jaw dropping, baffling shit all day long. That where like, I mean, as I get older, my circle gets smaller and what matters is different and my family, you know, but I love hard and I want the best for everyone, but who I want to let in this hula hoop is getting smaller and smaller.
Agreed.
That.
Yeah. You know what? I don't know how much time we have left. How much time do we have? Do you know? Okay. So I was just thinking about how easy it is to get into like the opposite sex or if, you know, same sex, whatever your preference is, and how hard it is to find like female friends for me. It was much easier to get into the chaos of relationships with men, but to find like solid women. And I was thinking about Amanda in that because she was talking about like how she's like a really good friend. And I mean, she really is. She'll do anything for anybody, but how long it took to get those friendships for me. It was much easier to just grab the guy from treatment, you know, then it was like, yeah, you know, but actually finding genuine friends that you can build and are, I don't want to say not everybody's worth your time, but like worth your investment and your time, you know, and what you give to them and you get back. It takes a long time.
Well, we've taught each other. You've helped me to be more cautious and more mindful of who I let in my hula hoop because I was letting everybody in that mofo and giving them my full heart. And then you get heartbroken because not everyone is how you are. But Sarah, you've showed me, and I think I've helped you to open up more, and you've helped me to be more cautious. Yeah. So it's
that's
a
good friendship right there.
Street, right?
Love that.
Yeah.
How do people find you, Mr. Matthew Warren Williams?
Find me on Instagram at MWarWilliams. Probably the easiest way to do so.
Okay. How about you, Sarah?
Sarah E. Frias.
Amanda Marino Recovery on Instagram and TikTok. And this podcast is sponsored by Next Level Recovery Associates. We all represent Next Level, and we provide awesome services for families in need. Thank you so much for your time and your energy today.
Thank you.